Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades with Gary Hopper.
This is my favorite daughter, Anna. Sitting in for Matt. She's better looking than Matt, so we had her tonight. Matt's away for the day. And tonight, our guest, Anna, guess who we have for guest?
I can't guess.
Yes. Jerry and Sue DeLamas from, I don't even know what town you're from. Rochester, the big city. They're out from the big city.
Nice.
Sue, I served with in the 2010 to 2000.
I think we were 11, 12.
11, 12? Well,
You
you
know,
got
it's
elected
funny,
in
it's been
2010.
so long ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got elected in
Yeah.
10.
You got elected in 2010. Served 2 years with you, and now you're running for sheriff. You haven't
That's right.
have you been elected to anything else, or is this your first run?
No, this is my first run.
Okay. So Sue, why? We'll start off, ladies first. Why are you running for state rep again? Did you have that much fun? Or?
It was so much fun. I just want to go back and get that $100 for the year, right?
Yeah.
Is
I
it
mean,
the free tolls that
It was
does
the
it for
free
you?
tolls, I guess. Yeah, except for I don't go through tolls to
Oh,
get to Concord
okay.
from Rochester. So
no, you have to go out of your, well, if you go out of your way.
Yeah, just
You
to
know
get
what I mean?
it.
Like if you went down through Nashua, then up into Concord from Rochester.
yeah, then I could get different mileage, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, no. I am running against a person who has, I believe, been rather destructive to the children and family units here in the state of New Hampshire.
Yep.
And I'd like to unseat her and get in and do some good conservative work. I'm probably going to be looking to get rid of regulation and take back some of the laws, hopefully fees and taxes that have been put back on since you and I were in session.
Right.
I mean, that seems to always be the way it goes. They get in, they spend money, then the money, everyone goes broke, and you end up with something like a 23% increase in your gas tax.
Right.
Then we hopefully will get back in and stop that crazy machine.
Yeah, I was contemplating this a while ago because people always say, well, we need money for this and we need money for that. And my new pat answer is, there's people paying 30, 40, or 50% of their income just in taxes. That's enough.
Yeah.
It's just enough. You can't just keep bleeding people because you have another program, and it's not like the situations are not legitimate, but some of them are manufactured, like the case with the border and right now with all those young kids coming over. Obviously, you can't put up throw them all in a concentration camp and because they're little kids.
What you can do is you can stop them before they enter this country.
Exactly.
And they could do that with the National Guard, which will not step across posse comitatus. The governors can do that. And the governors actually, what they ought to do is withhold their funds to the federal government that they're sending in on taxes if, in fact, the federal government's not going to do their job. Why would you pay someone to do a job after they've already expressed it, shown that they're not going to do the job you're paying them for? So they should hold their funds within those states enough to pay for the National Guard, any added expense for the federal government not doing their job, not give that money back to the federal government. Let the federal government figure out how they're going to come up with that money. Because what they're doing is they're destroying the United States of America by allowing these people in who are breaking the law. There was in Murrieta, the city of Murrieta in California, the group stopped those 3 buses, just citizens. They weren't militia or anything else. They were citizens. One of those guys who stepped across a yellow ribbon got thrown in jail, arrested and thrown in jail for stepping across a yellow ribbon. But while our federal government is protecting 3 busloads of people who are here illegally, that's ridiculous. It's got to stop.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the suggestions was to, obviously they're little kids, so there's a limit for a Christian country as to what they can and can't do.
Well, they have little kids in the Middle East who are strapping bombs on themselves, blowing up our soldiers over there. So there's a determination of what a little kid is. If a little kid can get all the way up from Guatemala to our border and into our country, I got a question on someone is taking care of that child to get him to that point.
Yeah, it is a conspiracy. I mean, the fact of the matter is it's illegal to be from Guatemala and cross the Mexican border. Absolutely. Okay.
And our federal-
somebody.
Well, it's illegal for us to cross the Mexican border.
What I'm getting at is somebody is negotiating with the Mexican government to let those kids through and escort them up to the American border. It is a conspiracy. It isn't happening by accident.
There's a document, January 29th, that our federal government put out looking for contractors in the United States to take and help relocate 65,000 children into this country. And our federal government was looking January 29th of this year. They put this out, looking for bids for contractors to help relocate 65,000 children coming in from South America, Central America, and Mexico.
But you don't
so they
hear
knew
about
something
that.
was going on then. This is not a surprise to anybody but the American people.
Yeah, they were preparing for this for quite some time.
Absolutely, they are, and the parents will follow. When those kids get into this country, let me tell you something. The parents will follow because now their kids are here. Can't keep them separated. Now we'll bring the parents in. They'll have a blanket amnesty. And our country right now, we've got veterans who are homeless. We got a Marine down in Mexico is being held hostage down there by their government, strapped by arms and feet to a cot for about 3 months. And what's our government do to get him out? Nothing. Zero. A phone call away could get that guy out of there. And if it couldn't, then there's something wrong with the office of the president and our Congress.
Yeah, we're being pretty much scammed. But anyway,
Cloward Piven, I would say.
Yeah.
But Sue, what else do you plan on doing when you're?
I'm planning on making sure that I'm a good, solid conservative vote, constitutional vote.
Now, who are you running?
I'm running against Ann Grassi.
Do you have you don't have a primary?
I don't have a primary.
Okay, so you don't have a primary. So you're running against Ann Grassi, and how'd she do on the gun bill?
Ann Grassi?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know there's 400 of us, so I don't know them all.
Yeah, she's.
Karl Marx.
I'm not surprised that you don't know her, but she definitely is anti freedom in every way. She'd like to take all of our guns and melt them down, and she'd like to. She doesn't believe that we should.
Some of them are made of plastic. Wouldn't she be concerned about the carbon,
fumes? Well, it's quite
carbon
possible.
footprint?
Yeah, she'd probably want to have them taken care of in a different way.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
No,
she'd
she'd
like
like
to
to
recycle that.
And she certainly knows that it does take a village, and she loves Common Core.
Yeah.
She's just, President Obama's poster child.
We did a show on that like last year about the It Takes a Village.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the fundamental difference is? Hillary Clinton wrote "It Takes a Village."
Yeah, right.
What she means by "It Takes a Village" is it takes the government.
Right, of course, because the village is the government.
Now, Rick Santorum wrote "It Takes a Family." I think it was his book.
Is an answer, yeah.
As the answer, and because the premise when you hear the title "It Takes a Village," it sounds legit because it harkens back to eras when there'd be a French quarter or the Irish quarter and everybody, the little kids on the street knew their uncle was across the street watching them, keeping an eye on them.
That would still be a family.
But that's still a family, and that's what people think of when they say it takes a village, as that old system where you had grandparents and parents and uncles and aunts all living in a small area. They don't understand that what Hillary Clinton really means is the government oversight of everything you do or think.
Which is communist.
And it's not. The government really isn't good at bringing up children.
Socialist and communist.
Well, we've had governments try to bring up children in the past. There were communists in the USSR. We also had Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime bringing up children from infancy, and it's never worked out well for freedom. It's never worked out for those children.
It's really worked well. It's very, very effective at instilling propaganda and instilling good subjects.
I thought that's what the major media was for.
But
if you look at what Hitler did, he early on in school they were starting to teach the kids to question their parents.
That's right.
And to rat on their parents.
And rat on their neighbors and everything else. But the first thing he did?
You want to hear what she got from comic? Is it okay if I tell you what they gave Scotty for an assignment? It's okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
They gave my grandson an assignment. It was
He had to write an essay. He's in 3rd grade, or he was. He's going into 4th grade. But he had to write an essay, pick a rule in our household that he did not agree with and write a persuasive essay about why he should not have to follow that rule.
Nice.
Isn't that nice?
And he told me that he didn't want to do that assignment, and I said, well, we can talk to the teacher later, but you have to do your homework. So you can do the homework, and
Subversion.
and it apparently came directly out of a Common Core curriculum. Although Manchester has said they are not following Common Core, that they're developing their own standards.
That line up
But
with it.
that specific assignment was a verbatim example from a Common Core curriculum.
So they're putting it in there anyway. It's a very hard fight. That's why I'm running.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm running to fight against every little piece of anti-freedom legislation that comes through the House. That's really why I'm running. But you know what Hitler did first? Healthcare.
Oh.
He did healthcare first. That was the first thing that was his first shoe to drop. And after he got control
Because
of
he loved,
healthcare,
that's only because he loved the people.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, we know how much you love the people, certain people.
Well, then they rated people according to their usefulness to the country on what kind of care they would get, or if in fact, like the mentally infirm and all, it was okay to go ahead and kill them. And handicaps, it was good to kill them. And if you look at, we have death panels in the Obamacare, even regardless of what what people are saying about it, there are. And what they'll do is they'll cut care to them. So it might be in a different way, but the end result is the same.
Yeah, well, it's. I joke about it on the show, but I said, after the IRS scam where they were targeting Tea Party people.
That's a crime. That's a crime when they do that.
I know, it's a federal
That's exactly why Nixon actually ended up resigning over accusations of having an enemies list, which is exactly what the president and his administration has been doing with Liberty people.
But my point is that if the IRS will target people who remember the Tea Party, and somebody like me needs a heart transplant or something like that.
Right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, what's your name again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we lost the
We don't make your blood type anymore, sorry.
Yeah. We lost the paperwork. Our hard drive crashed.
Well, the funny thing, one of the things that really gets to me is that, you hear a lot out of the liberals. Oh, there's no such thing as a conspiracy. There's no conspiracy. You're a conspiracy theorist. Well, guess what? There have been conspiracies throughout history, the history of mankind, through every government. Et tu, Brute?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Right.
I mean, and people deny it and say, oh, no, not anymore. We're too sophisticated. That is such a...
That is ignorant. It's just,
lie.
it's arrogant.
It's not
It's just,
ignorant.
it's ignorant and it's arrogant. It really is. If you don't think that there are people who stay up until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning just thinking about ways to screw you over,
Well,
you got another thing coming.
Well, the whole thing over the Mexican border, that's planned.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Absolutely.
They have evidence that it was planned, X number of months ago. And Obama, if asked, is going to say, well, geez, I just heard about it on the CBS News just like everybody else.
Well, part of the problem with that is the Congress. Well, the Congress has been aware
Sorry.
of what's going on. And I'll give this one to Boehner and also to Harry Reid. And Pelosi, those guys knew what was going on.
Yeah.
It's not the Republicans in Washington aren't ignorant of what's going on as well. They claim ignorance, and the libs love to say that the president or even some of the conservatives say that President Obama is ignorant. Oh, he must not know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. And Congress doesn't have the former Marine, and it's a term I would use, but they don't have the physical prepared mindset to be able to stand up to when someone is doing something wrong and call them on it. Right now we have lost the vast majority of Congress's authority and power through our legislative process in the government.
I don't agree.
I
absolutely disagree. I think it's the Boehners and all those. It's every time Obama does something like this allowing all these kids over, increases the breadth and scope of government.
Right.
Boehner is the Republican mainstream is part of that conspiracy.
Exactly.
Okay, we
I
must not
absolutely-
be understanding each other because we agree with that.
I absolutely agree
But
with
I'm
that.
saying they're not ignorant. It's not like they don't have the testicular fortitude to fight back. It's they don't want to fight back. The only people the
will.
Republican mainstream are fighting back against are Tea Party candidates.
That's right.
well, the,
Yeah,
because
well, the-
they actually pose a threat to the system.
Yes,
right, and that's
from
why the
both
GOP
sides.
hates the Tea Party.
Yeah.
I mean, you see Mitch McConnell cutting funding to candidates. He'd rather see a Democrat win than he would a Tea Party candidate.
Exactly.
And they go out and
Same with the state government.
Yep.
well,
Not national,
yeah,
not just
Karl Rove
federal.
goes out and hammers. If you look at what happened down there with that Cochran in that election down there, is you see all the people who are donating to him against the Tea Party candidate, and when
that Cochran might have been
Karl Rove and the likes of those people, you saw the Sarah Palins and the rest of them trying to help out the conservative candidate to try to win, and who the Republicans turned to, but the Democrats to win that primary.
Yeah, you saw.
Unbelievable.
Oh yeah, well well, you know how politics works. I mean, if they could have gotten a candidate to, if they could have gotten a candidate to run against her, they would have.
Sure.
They definitely would have found a liberal Republican who had name recognition to run against her, if they were organized enough or
They
could
want to
have.
do that to us, I'm sure.
And
I'm
that
sure.
person probably wouldn't even care if they got elected.
Right.
It's just to keep her out. That's the
Exactly
kind of
right.
stuff they will do. It's
Instead
relentless.
of caring about the people. We are,
they care
I'm
about
the people.
power.
I want somebody when they go into the government to represent me. I want them to represent me. I want them to care about what's going on,
Yep.
not just be in there because it's some power trip.
I'll give you an example how corrupt DC is. When I don't know how many years ago, I was sitting there. I was talking to a friend in Ware, and he was involved in military contracts. He said that when he went to DC to talk to people about selling his product, because that's what they do, all of the delegates from New Hampshire, he was not allowed to talk to them unless he had his checkbook ready, except Bob Smith.
Yeah, that sounds just like Bob.
And
Smith.
remember, those were all Republicans at the time. So I'm sure the Democrats are exactly the same. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to say how Republicans are so great. That would have been Judd Gregg, Charlie Bass, and I'm not sure who the other congressman was. But you had to have your checkbook open, or you didn't even get a chance to sit down and have coffee with them.
Well, the problem is that the Republican Party and the Democrats, I'm talking leadership, is they play good cop, bad cop with the American people all the time.
All the time.
But they're marching in the same direction.
But we're not in the position we're at now as a country with our freedoms and also lack of our freedoms and also with our economic dilemmas that we're facing without the Republicans having their hands on the steering wheel part of the time and the Democrats having their hands on the wheel. If you listen to what both of those groups say about each other and you believed them, you wouldn't elect any of them.
No. Well,
So-
you look at Common Core, it was George Bush, Judd Gregg, and Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy and Judd Gregg got together and did No Child Left Behind. I think it was the term for it back
Yep.
then.
Yep.
Okay, it's theoretically Republican.
Well, before that, it was outcome-based education, which was out of the Carnegie Institute, which was put through by the Clintons, was really pushed in the
Right.
Clintons. I was fighting that back in the 90s.
Yeah, but if that was the 90s, that would have been a Republican Congress.
Right. I was talking the presidency.
Right, I know,
And,
But still,
What I'm
you-
getting at is
it's-
you're right. They're all on the same team, but they pick issues to generate income, basically, and issues that are going to divide people and make people upset.
right.
Try to hit them emotionally. The people get motivated, send the Republicans money to stop it, and the Democrats to promote it, or vice versa, and
They're
they
the same.
It's the same thing.
And the Constitution goes down the toilet.
Yep.
The reality is that and I'll say this for the Democrats, as far as just the average Democrat voter and the average Republican voter are both being abused and taken advantage of by our federal government and our state government for that matter. And because they are doing a bait and switch on them. If you look at the cost of living, what's happened in the last 40 years, you say 1974, you could buy a brand new Ford pickup for about $4,500. and you pay cash for that truck. You could buy a house for $30,000, $35,000 right? And you're in the median range. You could look today, and I'll say also back then is you look at a union carpenter in California was making between $12.50 an hour to about $16 an hour. That was their wage. I'm going to forget the price of bread and all that. Gas was cheap. Is now you look to today, 40 years later. That truck costs $45,000 to $50,000 for the same truck.
But there's no
that house
inflation.
costs you about $250,000, and that carpenter's making between probably $12 to maybe $25 an hour, depending on who they're working for, where they're working. Is what's happened is American people have been left behind. Their purchasing power has diminished. It's been picked up by credit, and this is through Republicans and Democrats. They changed the way they report inflation. They took out the key issues so they could always report that inflation's down. Well, it is down, but it's really down on the American workers' buying power because they have to finance everything that they buy to, in fact, pay their bills. That's why we have so many people on welfare. We have so many people on food stamps. Is because our country's been looted. When we take money and we give billions of dollars to AIG to fund them for their lousy job, we give it to the banks for the lousy job that they did. If you owned a company and it did a lousy job, the federal government's not going to come in and go, well, here's a couple $1 million to get you out of the woods. That's not going to happen. But what they've done is they've decimated the middle class in America, and that's why I believe that our leadership and our government feels that in fact what they are is they're a ruling class. And we're the servant class. The middle class is, for all intents and purposes in America, been taken out of the picture.
Well, if you look back in the early '90s when George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton, theoretically, Bill Clinton's for the working man, both of them started saying that we have to go to a service-based economy.
Right.
Okay. Now let's think this through.
I remember that.
A service-based economy. What that means to the normal people, because that doesn't sound that it's not that descriptive. A service-based economy means the jobs you can get will be in the service industry. The service industry would include McDonald's, shining shoes, motels, things that don't
not manufacturing.
Not manufacturing. Now, if you look at how a country is built, it's from manufacturing.
That's right.
Because
and
a
all of ours is somewhere
manufacturer
else now.
takes iron, casts it, makes hand grenades. I forgot to talk about my hand grenades. Makes a product. Okay, they take something from nothing, make a product and add value to it and sell it.
Right.
And the people that make that product on the assembly line or in the machine shop and every place else make money because they're generating money.
Right.
A service industry, if you don't have the people in manufacturing to buy the hamburgers, you don't have a service industry.
Right.
And that's what they've done. That's what they did to the middle class is they shipped all that to China.
Well, Ross Perot is exactly right. That giant sucking sound was through a North American Free Trade Agreement and also the Global Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, which was GATT, that became the World Trade Organization. In fact, what they did is they took their major donors and family members who owned huge corporations or involved in huge corporations and allowed them to flee to other countries where they didn't have to put up with our government regulations, and then they could manufacture things in those countries and then sell them back to us, and hence then we went right back on to more credit. We'd buy more things because the American worker doesn't have the ability to go out and find a good paying job where they can go out and move out of their house as a 20-year-old or 19-year-old and go out and find a job that they can self-support themselves because the rents are too high, and that's because there are not those jobs here because our federal government, in fact, aided and abetted, and they still are, in the looting of America. They're taking the money out and they're making themselves wealthy. I mean, name the congressmen, there's not too many of them, or senators that don't leave government office multimillionaires.
Yep.
They leave rich.
Well, they put up candidates that are globalists.
We have
globalists.
Bob Smith is one of the ones who did not
those.
figure out. Maybe you could say he just wasn't smart enough.
I think he's plenty smart enough.
We love him. Yeah,
I think he's plenty smart enough. He's just got too much integrity.
Right, I know.
Which is the one.
Well, and he doesn't have ulterior motives either, like the globalists do.
Right.
I mean, really, if
Well,
people
you look at
really
the
opened their
Pelosi's-
eyes and woke up and saw
You look at the
reality.
Pelosi's and all those. The people around them are getting so filthy rich. You know, we have
Fuller.
a call. Whoa, Anna.
All right, let's see.
Hello, you're on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Hello, you're on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Hello, statue.
Hello?
Hey, Gary.
Yeah.
Hey, John is making a copy of Norm and Friends Psychic Show, the show that's before you, the one with the highest ratings.
Yeah.
Can you get it? Can you please pick that up for me, because it wasn't ready, but it'll be ready by the time you're
That's your call in.
Really?
Don't forget the milk.
Okay, bye.
Oh man, that's hysterical.
I'm assuming that's a friend.
That was Ross Terry, who's a state rep.
Yes, thanks, Ross.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. No, the answer to the question was no. I'm not gonna. But so you're running for sheriff. Why are you running for sheriff?
And the state of New Hampshire does not have a sheriff that is a member of the Constitutional Sheriff's Association, which and the reason for that group is that in fact those sheriffs in fact will adhere to the Constitution of the United States and also the Constitution of their states. What we have is we have sheriffs in the state that refuse to join that group, and I went out to the Bundy Ranch in Nevada, and I spent about a month out there as a camp commander.
Wait, before you get into that, explain to them what that is, because people may not.
I went on Drudge Report, and I read an article about this rancher out in Nevada who was being attacked by the Bureau of Land Management, and they had snipers aiming rifles and stuff at their family and their kids and grandkids. They got 15 children. I think it's either 52 or 54 grandchildren at a cattle ranch that family had in one form or another occupied since the 1870s in Nevada, the last remaining cattle ranch in Carroll County, Nevada. So I after reading the articles, watched some videos that the owner had made up, this guy Clive Bundy, I called him, talked to him on the phone, and I asked him what he needed. He said he needed some help, needed bodies. So I immediately said, this was on a Tuesday morning, I said I can't leave before Thursday, and I headed out Thursday and drove to Nevada for 2,700 miles, 41 hours of straight driving plus stopping for coffees and gas. What happened out there is in 1870s is the Bundy family, which was on the wife's side, so they weren't Bundys, but there was a one-time grazing fee on federal lands in the state of Nevada that family had paid that one-time fee to the federal government so they could use the public lands to graze their cattle on.
Right.
What happened is in the, I believe it's in the 50s, might be in the 40s, that the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, came into play. Mind you, they'd been on the grazing on there about 80 or 90 years at that point. 80 years is that when the Bureau of Land Management came in, they says we'll take over conservation of the land. We'll take care of making sure everything's working on it, and you'll pay us per head of cattle that you graze on the land. Well, everybody thought that was a pretty good idea because they'd done quite a bit of work, so they went along with it. Well, what happened is the Bureau of Land Management was taking the money and not doing the job. Sounds very familiar, like our federal government.
Like taking the money for the border and not
taking the money and not doing it. So what happened is
an excuse for taking money.
Most of the ranchers, and I'll use Carroll County, Nevada for the example, all but one rancher, who happened to be Clive Bundy, went ahead and they hired attorneys, and they mortgaged their homes and their ranches, the land that they owned, to sue the federal government and get them to do their job. Well, the federal government with the deep pockets, because they could reach into ours,
they could just keep
they
installed
them until that they had no money left. They couldn't get their cattle onto the land, and then they ended up going bankrupt and having their properties foreclosed on, losing their ranch, and so they were out. There were no more problem. Well, Clive Bundy, with the wisdom that he possessed, didn't hire an attorney. He did it all himself. He lost all the court cases in court because a federal judge on a federal matter over lands that the federal government doesn't want them to use. So,
you think there's a connection there?
I don't know.
Maybe
quite unique.
Maybe.
So Clive Bundy ended up keeping his cattle on the land. And then what happened is the Bureau he offered the money. Actually, he didn't have a problem paying the fee. He said, "But I want you to do the job. And I'm paying you to do a job, do the job." So he had written them a letter, fired him, the Bureau of Land Management, federal government, and then he offered the money up to the state of Nevada. I'll pay the same rate to you guys. You just take care of the conservation of land. Well, Nevada wouldn't have any part of it, and of course we do have Harry Reid there, and taking care of that county as well.
Yeah, he's taking care of things already.
So
Yeah, he sure
what
is,
happened
isn't
is they blocked his cattle onto that land and wouldn't let him get them off, and it was right during the calving season. And so the cows that had the babies, and what happened is that the Bureau of Land Management hired contractor cowboys, went in with helicopters, all started executing the cattle, separating the cows from the calves. And the cows were dying because they couldn't get milk from their mothers. The cows were wandering around full of milk with no place to discharge that.
they were getting sick.
I went and witnessed where the Bureau of Land Management had taken one of their prize breeding bulls in a containment pen, round pen, a small one, shot it in the head, and drug it about 1.5 miles away from there so no one would see it, and then left it out in the desert. I found another one out in another place, and then I found a mass grave right behind the Bureau of Land Management staging area where they had buried the cattle and left legs sticking out and sides sticking out. We dug them up, a few of them up. And what happened is while that was all going on, the murder of all their cattle, the Bureau of Land Management, in their infinite wisdom, had aimed rifles, had sniper teams. They blocked all that property off, aimed at the Bundys and their grandchildren and their children to keep them from going out onto that property. So when I talked to Clive and Bundy, that's just outrageous to me. And aiming guns at children, that just doesn't go. And so that's why I went. And so at any rate, as we stood up to them, and then they pulled out. The Bureau of Land Management did pull out. And the Bundys are.
But by the end, you guys outnumbered them pretty heavily. It was you guys had 400 or so.
You got to think. We're talking the entire federal government. Who has who outnumbered?
Right, I know.
But I'll tell you this: is there were a lot of retired police. There were retired Marines, maybe in a former Marine. Actually, there were more Marines there than anybody. Lots of Marines. There were Navy SEALs out there. There were Air Force or Army. I mean, about every branch of the service. Then there were just civilians out there who had never had a gun in their life and didn't care to have one, standing up to these guys, going, "This is wrong. This is America. You don't get to do this." When I pulled in, the night I pulled in, I'm just going to go real quick on this. The night I pulled in, I pulled guard duty all night. I got about an hour shut-eye. The next morning, I was asked by Ryan Bundy, Cliven's son, if I would, and he's a cowboy. Cowboy has 6-gun on, belt, knife, buck knife in his belt, cowboy boots, whole 9 yards, because that's what they do, spurs. I mean, they're cowboys. He asked me, he says, and we didn't know each other. This is the first time I'd seen him. He says, "Can you run escort for us? We want to go try to get some of the calves." So I'm game. That's what I was there for. So I loaded up in my truck, 5 or 6 guys in the back. Everybody was armed. Another guy riding shotgun with me and myself. And we followed him to protect them, give them protection so that they wouldn't get shot trying to gather up their calves. So as we're following them, I'm reading on the back of their truck. There were 2 guys in the truck, Ryan Bundy and in one of his hands, is they've got 2 cow ponies in the back, under saddle on the back of the stock trailer. As I look at the stock trailer, it says on this little sticker on the back, says Bundy Ranch. And I'm looking at that, and I look back at the back of my truck, and I see all the guys with guns and all armed up, and I look at that, and I think, oh my God, these guys are just trying to go to work. They're just trying to go to work, and they got to be protected by citizens that are traveling across this country to protect these guys so they can go to work from our federal government. What is wrong with us? There's something inherently wrong with what's going on in America right now, and Americans just need to stand up to it and say, "Look, this is wrong." I mean, you got the IRS thing, you've got the border thing going on, you've got Benghazi going on. When do the American people stand up and say, "You know what? This is enough"? I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent. I don't care what you are. The communists won't stand up because they support it. But as an American citizen, you've got to stand. And if you
look back in history, Germany. Okay, people always say the German people were nice people, but guess what? They didn't stand up.
They elected Adolf Hitler as chancellor, and I'll bet you some Jews voted for him as well. We've got in the White
House right now.
Huh?
He was elected.
Right, but you look at communism. The Russian people are not bad people, but they allowed communism to run rampant and destroy the Catholic Church, or it's an Orthodox Catholic
Church.
Orthodox Catholic Church in Russia for many years, and persecute
they ran
Christians.
Christianity out
because they're desperate, and that's what it is. When these governments take over, it's because the people are desperate. They don't know what else to do. They
look into the government for salvation.
Get into a situation that the government manufactures where the people feel
right.
that they have no way out. There's nothing, they need somebody to save them, and then someone offers a solution that sounds like the way out, and nobody else is offering anything else that sounds like any type of solution.
Well, part of that is that the offers to do something else are out there. They just don't want to do them because they're on the government dole. I mean, we have so many people in this country, in one form or another, looking for the federal government or the state government to pay their way. One way, you take welfare, take Social Security, even though people paid into Social Security, irregardless, is they're looking for the government for the check every month, whatever it happens to be. Retirement, even though those people did work for it. But what happens is when the federal government says, hey, look, we're spending more than we've got to cut back, they're going to vote for the guy who says, hey, you know what, we're going to make sure you get your COLAs, your cost of living adjustments, that we're not going to take anything away from you. What happens is it runs right into bankruptcy. And Cloward Piven had a great plan for decimating the country by overloading the system, overtaxing the system, which is exactly what's happening on the border.
Who is he?
Cloward Piven?
Cloward and Piven were a couple,
Okay.
husband and wife team, yeah. And they were professors, and they came up with a theory that if you overload the system, it will collapse, of course, financially, and then as a communist state, you can put that into
Seize control.
Yeah, seize control and put that into power.
Right.
And so that's they're communists and communist socialists.
So the idea is not to take over the country from without, but to just basically
exactly
bankrupt
what's
it.
going on with bringing those kids in right now.
Right.
It's a cloud. I've ever since that started. Right. It always connects. Well, this is a Cloward Piven move.
Right.
And it certainly is. Their philosophy was to just get as many people on the dole, as many people on food stamps, on welfare, on any kind of program you can get them on in any way possible. And bringing in these illegal aliens that they're doing right now is just another straw on the camel's back.
Well,
and that is working to collapse the system.
Well, if you add that to a deliberate attempt by Republicans and Democrats to butcher the middle class, because the middle class is the one who really pays for everything. They're the ones who it's not.
We're not even middle class.
You don't have a
anymore.
republic without a middle class.
Right. You don't have because it's the middle class. Even though they don't necessarily pay the 40% income tax, they're still the ones buying the product that the entrepreneurs are producing.
They also do the work to provide the product.
Yeah, exactly. So without that middle class, it's much easier because the rich, the filthy rich, can just leave.
Sure.
When
They
the
do whatever
crap
they
hits the
want.
fan, it's okay, whatever, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
There's a book by a fellow named Macaulay. It's called Millennium. It was written in the 90s, and I believe he was one of the guys in the World Bank. He was, I believe, the finance minister for Mitterrand in France. And he wrote this book, and he talks about corporations. Is what they would do is they would go to third world countries, establish their business, their manufacturing. They would manufacture products because labor's cheap and there's no labor laws. They'd manufacture them, but what happens is on the heels of that is then you end up developing a middle class. And then you start having labor laws. People want higher wages, and things go up. And then what they would do is they'd sell as much product to them as they could. But when that middle class became too expensive for what they thought it should be, they would go off and they would move their manufacturing to another third world nation and let that nation collapse. They'd keep bleeding all the money out of it, let that one collapse, build up another one in another country or a continent, and then do that, bounce that around the world. But that way, they're always in power. They always control things, and because there's no loyalty to a, and I won't say that for all corporations, but for the majority of them, for a sovereign country, they don't have allegiance to America. They don't have allegiance to France or to England or anywhere else. It's to their business and to the empire that they built. But that empire moves around, and that was his. It's the short version of exactly what he said. I read that in the 90s, and I've watched it happen because that's exactly what's happening. Yeah. Our middle class is being destroyed, and they're moving it off to China, to elsewhere, trying to build their purchasers of the products. We don't have the money to purchase all the products. Eventually, we're going to run completely out of money and out of credit. I mean, our credit rating in this country is stinking anyways. And
even in New Hampshire.
Right. It's and
How did that happen?
there's an end to it. Overspending. Overspending, spending money you don't have. Each city, if you take the Medicare unfunded liability, you take the prescription drug liability, the unfunded, and you also take Social Security, which is unfunded, the portions of that's unfunded, you're sitting about $120 trillion. You're right in that area. It's actually more than that right now. But it goes up for each taxpayer, and that means if you work at companies, or if you're the CEO of a corporation, each taxpayer in America, that's not each citizen, but each taxpayer owes about $1.2 million on the unfunded liabilities. For just those three. That's not counting the rest of it. $1.2 million. And it goes up about $4,000 per taxpayer every month. Most taxpayers, I'd say the vast majority of them in America, aren't making $4,000 net a month. So how do you offset that? And that's at the current interest rates. If our bond rating sinks, which it will, and they have to raise interest levels in this country. The Fed has to raise interest rates to draw in foreign investors, people to buy our bonds because they're more worthless. Is when they catch on to that, that means that debt's going to increase. It'll double, triple. And then how does the average citizen pay? Say a debt of $3 or $4 million that's unfunded, and that's not counting their own bills, and also then the credit cards prices will go up, the interest rates on that, and homes and the rest of it. And what they've done is they've set the perfect storm for a complete economic collapse, which is America's Achilles' heels is the economy. Yep. And you better have strong people. I don't think the federal government's going to save us at all. I don't think we can look to them to save us. I saw Bob Smith down there, and I love him, but I feel like I'm feeding anybody I send down to Washington who's good to a volcano. But in the state, if you send people like yourself or like Susan to the state house, or you elect constitutional sheriffs, you've got a firewall between the rest of the country and your state. And you need a firewall to protect your state. That's why states didn't give up their sovereignty to make the United States. They didn't give up their sovereignty because the power still comes from up within the citizens of that state up to the state government of that state, and then onto the federal government.
This still has some meaning.
It's got huge power. Yep. If you abide by this, you've got the law, which is the Constitution, and this is the federal. The state goes as well. You've got the rule of law on your side. That is where the law of the land. Every law in the United States of America is founded on this. It's supposed to be. And what happens is our federal government ignores this. They take this and throw this away, and hence they're lawless. That's why Congress is having a problem with the president not abiding by the law.
The problem is that they found a way around the Constitution before I ever got into it. I got elected in 2000, and one of the things that just absolutely blew me away, and it was right from the get-go, and I was working as a tool maker. I was working full time, so I went on the Fish and Game Committee because it's a pretty light workload, and I knew I was going to miss a lot of overtime and stuff. So I was trying to reduce the amount of time I'm away from work. And right out of the gate, there was a bill to require your Social Security number to be on your fishing and hunting license. And so and this is a Republican-controlled House. I said, so what's the point of this? Well, the federal government said, if we don't do this, we're going to lose funding. Okay, and I'm sure your favorite wife has seen the same thing on whatever committee she was on. And what it was that Constitution says that the federal government can't compel you to do certain things, but they can blackmail you. And so what they do is they took the money that I was earning during the week, tax it, take that money, bring it to the federal government, then use that to blackmail my state to do something it has no desire to do.
And it shouldn't. And there are the carrots. It happens at the
That's
the town and the city level too.
All the time.
I mean, the carrots are unbelievable. We have to go into the city council all the time and say, "Don't take this carrot."
Right.
We can't afford this carrot. It looks really good. It looks juicy, and it's nice and orange and fresh, and yummy. But if you eat that thing, you're gonna be in trouble. Wham! There goes the trap.
Anybody who ever fishes,
all the time.
Anybody who ever fishes, you put tantalizing bait on to cover the hook, and that's what that is.
Yep.
We're talking about is you're covering the hook with the bait. And I'll just go jump back to the Nevada deal with the Bundys out there. Is the sheriff Gillespie in that county out there has the legal authority? He could have stopped the BLM from doing that, from bringing guns out. Matter of fact, if they would have knocked on the Bundy's door and asked him, said, "Hey, you're guilty of a misdemeanor. We want to take you to jail," he'd have gone. That's just the way he is. And but the sheriff had the ability to stop that and never let that happen. Actually, it would have never happened if he had done his job that he was hired to under the Constitution. And that's why you need constitutional sheriffs, is because if they know what their rights are and what the citizens' rights are under the Constitution and adhere to it. I mean, these are the one document you raise your hand, you take an oath to support when you're elected office, is the Constitution. You don't take it to anything else. You don't take it to the Republican Party. You don't take it to the Democratic platform. You don't take it to any of it. You hold it to the Constitution.
Yeah, when we sat down, before we could even vote, I think it was prior to voting for Speaker.
Yes.
Before we could take any official business, we had to swear an oath to the Constitution of New Hampshire and the United States.
And I was we were more than happy to do that and meant it. We meant it.
Yeah.
But when we have people who we elect who don't even know what it is,
No, they
you
don't.
got a problem. If I'm elected as sheriff of Stratford County, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have the National Heritage Constitutional Studies. I'm going to have them put a class on and teach every deputy sheriff, hold that so they'll understand what their obligations and their rights are and the citizens' rights are under the Constitution. Then they're going to get re-oathed. Because it's important that we know this. This is the foundation of all of our law. A lot of the things we've got piled on here, I believe, are really unconstitutional, and they should not be upheld. And what we do is we take laws. I think Cicero called it that if a doctor prescribes you poison as a medicine and you die from it, he's not a doctor, he's a murderer.
Right.
So if we have taken an oath to a constitution and then don't uphold it and then pass laws that in fact are unlawful, we're lawbreakers, and that's the problem we're having with our government. It's lawless.
They're
we need to reel
absolutely
it back
lawless.
and step back in.
I mean, if you go, we only have a few more minutes, but if you go to the IRS scandal,
That's not a scandal. That's a crime.
it's a crime. Lois Lerner,
Yeah.
went before Congress
Lied.
and pled the Fifth. Okay, now you've been in business before, I presume. I don't know what you do for work. What employee, because she's our employee,
That's right.
could get away with being asked to come to the boss's office, and the boss says, "Hey, I get some questions. We think something's wrong's going on here. We really need you to tell us what's going on." What employee could get away with, I refuse
can't
to
answer
answer
that.
this on the grounds it might incriminate me?
Well, they have a fiduciary responsibility to be
but
looking out for us.
But just that fact
Yeah.
means she should have been fired instantly.
Right.
Because whatever she was going to testify, by definition, is likely to incriminate her. Therefore, she should not be an employee of the United States of America.
I agree with
at
that.
best.
Yeah.
And then that they said that they lost all these hard drives died. Everybody knows that has had a computer for more than a few months that you back up stuff, okay? And especially the IRS, is more so than any other branch of the government, has to be in the process or habit of backing up everything. Her hard drive crashing, A, is a load of bull.
It is.
Because anybody who knows anything about hard drives knows that information is recoverable.
Yep.
And B, even if it isn't recoverable, which it's not likely that it wasn't, it would have been backed up, and I believe by their own rules, had to have been backed up. So she is absolutely lying.
Breaking the
this
law
goes right to that.
on
This goes right to
multiple
Obama,
levels.
and he's protecting her, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Well, it's when criminal behavior becomes after it goes on for so long, it becomes obvious, and that's what we're witnessing. Is that the behavior of our government has been so corrupted that I don't even think they have the willpower to really hide it too much. Is because what's
They don't
happening
care.
is
They're
we're
getting away with it.
living in tyranny. I mean, if you have, how come there's so many commercials on the radio or television for people having a problem with the IRS to pay your way out of it? Now, and who do they hire? But former IRS agents who run those companies who know what they do, right? So they create even a market for themselves. When the IRS wants your information, You're not going to be able to use, oh, my computer died and it crashed. Yeah, that's not going to do you any good. The first thing they're going to send you is a notice of lien or intent to lien your properties, and they're going to seize everything you have, and you're going to have to prove your innocence. But that doesn't work for our government. Our government has given themselves disclaimers and immunities that the American people don't have. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, we're not far off of what our founding fathers wrote to the King George of England about the problems that they were having with him and why they wanted to sever the relationship with him. If they're not going to write it, they need to go.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Absolutely.
Are you offended by the fact that they have old Navy apparel, but they don't have old Marine apparel?
I have my old Marine apparel on. That's why I'm shaving. Actually, because I did a Marine Corps color guard this weekend.
That's too funny.
No, my dad was a jarhead too.
Yeah.
He was in the. You were only up there since 2000. You might know him anyway because you guys are from that area. You guys know former state rep Russ Albert?
I
know Russ Albert. Yeah.
He was in the Chosin Reservoir with my father.
The frozen chosen.
Yeah.
It was a tough deal. Really tough deal.
Yeah, but you hear Russ talk about it. He says, "Oh, you should have seen it. You know, there's I forget, a column of like 100 tanks. They came through the pass, and we took out the first one. We took out the last one. We lit them up. Oh, it was great."
Russ ran a flamethrower for quite a while.
Oh yeah, he was fun.
He's a tough guy.
He was a wicked cool guy.
Well, the Marine Corps motto is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. When I got out of the Marine Corps, they didn't de-oath me. They didn't say, "Okay, your oath's over." I still feel the oath that I took to this Constitution and to this country that we live in, and we have a price to pay to live here, and that is to stand up and do the right thing.
Yep.
And if we don't stand up and do the right thing, well, evil people are going to stand up and do the wrong thing, and then we're just going to be the victims of whatever it is they tend to dish out. Doing the right thing is not popular. Jesus was a prime example of that when he was on earth, as of doing the right thing was not popular with the government in place. We've got to stand up and find the courage to do the right thing.
That's actually a good point. If you look at what Christ did, a lot of people want to look at it as this religious thing. He was killed out of politics.
Sure.
It was all politics.
Totally.
Because he was a direct threat. He was a direct threat to the power that be, and that's all it was. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're seeing in our government today. And people have to stand up. People have to think outside the box. You've been electing stereotypical Republicans and Democrats who the Scott Browns of the world forever. Oh. And what has that given you so far?
There's no wealth. There's no welfare in a communist country. So anybody who thinks that they're going to go to a socialist, communist style of government and it's going to be good, well, if you're thinking that's going to support your welfare, your support, they don't have Social Security, they don't have unemployment, they don't have welfare in those states. So all those things that they're using to sell these programs to us don't exist in where they're trying to take us.
No, well, where are you trying to take us as breadlines? Hey, Jerry, thank you for your service to our country. So you're the awesomest ever, and my favorite daughter. You're still my favorite daughter.
Aww.
Hey, we'll see you next week.